Open the meeting at 5:40. Sorry for the delay. And motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make a motion we accept the minutes of July 10th as presented.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes of July 10th as presented. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And so we have the solar RFP bid opening per se. It's not the bid opening, but the bid discussion. And just for the record, all the bids were received on or before July 15th, 2013 at 5 p.m. and were opened by Cynthia Stoddard, our town manager, on July 16th, 2013. Bids were received from the following organizations: Sun Farm Clean Energy Collective at 37 Signal Pine Road in Putney, Green Lantern Capital and Integrated Solar at 121 Spring Street or Spring Tree Road in Brattleboro, and Sovereign at 101 Sullivan Drive in Putney. And copies were made and distributed to the 3 select board members, and we have looked at them. I'm not sure how thoroughly we are able to understand them in depth, but we're looking forward to hearing from the folks who are here. So I'm Josh, select board chair.
Scott Henry.
And Steve Beck.
And you guys are Nick.
Sun Farm. I'm Mike Wiggum with Integrated Solar.
Okay.
And Peter Thurl with Sovereign.
Good. So I don't really have a format here for how to proceed with this, and I think one of the challenges for us is that the 3 proposals are different enough so that it's hard for us to sort of make an apples to apples comparison of the proposals. And I don't know whether you guys have any suggestions as to how we might do that, or whether you each want to just sort of say briefly, talk a little bit about your proposal, or how we might best accomplish this. And I'm open to anybody's suggestion as to what the best format for this would be.
Well, without seeing any of the other proposals, I can't really make a judgment on which one is better per se. I think it's probably worthwhile that we each say a few words about our own proposals. Now, do you have some sort of comparison over there that we might be able to look at?
Kind of, sort of.
Kind of, sort of.
Well, if we could look at it, we could at least see whether maybe that's accurate.
That would be
Right.
perfect.
That would be helpful to start.
Because that's
Between the 3 of us, maybe she
here, and I'll send you a couple more copies. That way you can correct anything that's not.
I've never heard of it. They're reading
Want me to hold that out?
All right.
Catching up with
It's a slippery slope. I've got some 125s you can have. they're no longer.
No longer.
effective.
Yeah, useful for you. This last year, it's really started to kick in.
The other rule of thumb is don't spend a lot of money on them because you'll invariably sit on them, break them, leave them on the windowsill or whatever. You're better off with 10 pairs of cheap ones.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll bring yours in a second. It's one.
You have an option on display investments.
Yeah, we're very secure.
So I do think it'd probably be helpful for us to just give some maybe bullet points of, you know, who we are,
Yep.
what we're offering to you without going
Yep.
into like a ton of detail.
Yeah.
Right.
Then maybe you're going to have a pretty good grounding of what it is we're actually talking about.
Yeah.
And to be honest, one of the recommendations I might have to you after you kind of get all this information, and I know I would be happy to give you some references, I'm sure these guys could too, would be to contact some of the other towns who've actually done this,
Yeah.
and kind of get some feedback on what worked for you and why. You know, here's some of the things we're getting. You know, what's your take on what's being offered?
The other thing we discussed at our last meeting was having some people who have more experience than we do, you know, that have either been part of the solar RFP committee but you know, it's a little bit tricky because we don't want to sort of introduce anybody into the process that would be biased for any particular reason. So, but somebody who can analyze them a little bit more sort of accurately analytically than we can, and get some feedback from them. But we have not yet done that because we thought we'd start by basic understanding of what's going on. So,
Well, another thought I have, in addition to that, would be that each one of us could look at this and we could tell you what we think is better about our proposal than the other ones. And that might help you get a sense of what the lie of the land looks like. And, you know, if I say this is better about mine, and he thinks it's not, then he could rebut it and actually have a chance to hear it.
and have a sort of an open discussion about that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you guys obviously, as you haven't been privy to the other proposals at this point, but I think most helpful to us would be sort of an open discussion about who's offering what, and then a question about why one makes more sense than another for. So, I don't know whether you want to, Nick, do you want to start by giving us a quick rundown on?
Sure. So I'm actually working with Mike of Integrated Solar. We're currently under construction of a 150 kilowatt community, 147 kilowatt community solar array. It's up behind Santa's Land. It should be done, I believe, August 10th is the last date that I got. And the way that this works is that it allows any individual or municipality, in your case, to purchase panels in the array and then receive all of the electricity credits from those panels for the duration of 50 years, which is what we designed it to last for. And in that purchase price is everything, from the land lease to insurance to maintenance, replacement of equipment. Everything is included in that price. And the financial projections that I gave you there kind of spell out how much the payback is compared to the initial cost. The reason that it's 35 kilowatts is because that is the remaining capacity in this array that has not been spoken for. What we do have the ability to do, however, is to phase the town in and add more capacity in future arrays. We have a project that we're hoping will be done before the end of the year, as well as, or it's most likely next spring. We have another project where the town would be able to go ahead and, if they felt like it, purchase more capacity. The amount of that capacity, it looks like it's up to another 150 kilowatts, but then potentially even more, and this is a way, over the next few years, the town could potentially phase it in. But kind of the the take-home point with the community solar proposal is that the town is then supporting a community energy project, which has many people within the town already signed up, already taking advantage of this. We are able to take advantage of all of the tax credits up front and pass that savings on in the upfront price. And then the long-term maintenance really isn't a factor in the cost of an array over the long run. Something like the town is going to be around in 50 years. It's good to have a service contract that lasts the duration of the array, whereas I'm not sure the specifics of the other ones, but I'm assuming that all of the maintenance and replacing the equipment costs are not, those would belong to the town rather than with this. It's kind of, you pay once up front, you own the panels, and then that's it. You receive all of the credit for the next 50 years.
Is your cost of $113,750 the cost for 35 kilowatts?
Yes, that's correct. So that's $3.25 per watt installed, and that includes all insurance, maintenance, equipment replacement costs. So when the inverters inevitably go, those will be replaced. And then in addition, we maintain the array to a minimum of 80% of its initial output for that full 50-year period. So kind of as panels age, they degrade in output. And sometime around year 25 or 30, they'll be down to 80% of their initial output. At that point, we have extra space in the array where we'll either add new panels or replace some of the old panels with higher functioning ones to maintain that at the 80%. So, in year 45, 50, where another array might be down to 60% of its initial value, we're still producing at 80%, and that can be big savings down the road. I don't know if anyone has any kind of specific questions on this. It is a little different than the other two, which I feel are more similar to each other than this proposal, which is kind of a different route.
So I think that for practical purposes for the town, one of the key questions for us is bottom line cost. And I think that it appears from what you're saying that $3.25 a watt is the cost for installation and maintenance over that life of the system. Is that correct?
That is correct. So after that $3.25, the town would not pay anything else for its insurance, maintenance, equipment replacement costs, monitoring, anything like that.
It's similar to like any kind of average solar contract in the area where you are buying equipment. Once you make that original contractual agreement, you own the equipment, you get 100% of the benefit of what those panels provide to you and to your meter. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the biggest difference between what Nick's offering and what we're offering.
The biggest difference being?
You as a town entity are making a purchase.
Okay.
You are purchasing an upfront cost. You purchase that equipment. You own that equipment.
Right.
It's yours, and therefore you reap the benefit.
And you're making an out-of-pocket expense.
An upfront.
An upfront expense, which isn't involved in either of our proposals.
Okay. Okay. So.
Probably to advocate for you, it might be beneficial to some extent. I would say for you to project what your 35 kW is going to save the town in energy value.
That is included in the financial projections. There's kind of a lot of information. I erred on the side of more rather than less to give you kind of all of the numbers. But if you look at this sheet, the system cost is the $113,750. And then if you look all the way on the right side, the net total payback over the 50-year period is the $944,000 So that takes into account the cost of the system as well as everything else that's in there.
So we would be, by this, we'd be at break even in year
Year 12.
11 and a half, yeah.
Right around year 12 is when it's projected to pay for itself, but then we maintain it for 50 years. And this uses a 5% annual inflation in electricity costs, just to be clear on that, which is a fairly standard number.
Sorry, say that again there?
This takes into account a 5% annual inflation in the price of electricity.
Okay, yeah.
That's why the credits say at year 40 are so much higher than what they are today, because we anticipate the price of electricity being much higher now.
And has that held relatively true over the past 25 years?
Yes,
per se?
that's what we found. That's what it's kind of standard
Based on,
in projections of solar.
Using the state electrical numbers, we came up with a number of 4.23% over the last 40 years.
Okay,
So it's close.
yeah.
And then if you need me to explain any of these columns, I'm happy to do so. There's kind of a lot of numbers on here.
I'm curious with all of the proposals, if the amount of your credit exceeds the amount of your electricity use, like what your bill is from Green Mountain Power, do they send you a check at any point, or does the credit just sit there on your bill forever?
I mean, these deals are all a little bit different in that if you owned all of that stuff and it was you all going into only your account, if you had a credit in excess of what you consumed on a rolling 1-year basis, you are in the position that you might lose that credit. You can allocate it to other meters. There is, GMP has a precedent to some extent that they will make a payment, although our position is like don't bank on that one.
Right. That's the last I spoke with someone over at GMP about that. They said they had no intention of ending the program, but at the same time, I wouldn't encourage someone to oversize it as a money-making thing. I would say buy solar to offset your electricity, not to start your own little power plant. But with the 35 kilowatts, that would be well under what the town is using.
Right. That one definitely.
So you wouldn't have any risk of doing that.
All right. Do you want to?
Yeah, so again, I'm Mike. I work with Integrated Solar down in Brattleboro. And so our proposal is not for us just a proposal regarding a percentage of savings that the town is going to save by maybe going into this agreement. It's also, I want to really emphasize the partnerships that you might engage with on this one. So we are doing a lot of these municipal projects, and the only way that these get done is to have developers and investors. Right? So you put out an RFP to have a system developed and installed and financed by somebody, and you'll get a financial benefit of that. So we've been designing and installing systems for a long time in the area, and we were approached and are partners with an entity called Green Lantern Capital, which is a Waterbury-based renewable energy development company. They've established the only commercially financed solar fund in the state that's specifically targeted for municipalities and for not-for-profits, so schools and towns are the ones that are doing this. So they're a Vermont developer, they're our development partner, they're the ones that you would be working with in regards to the agreement that you might engage with on this deal. And they therefore have Vermont-backed investors who have already allocated a fund that's ready to be deployed today. So for this year, they put about $25 million out for a fund, and we've put under contract and or installed the systems Green Lantern has with the town of Rutland, Waterbury, Richmond, Jericho, Brattleboro, and we're doing contract negotiations right now with Chester and a couple sites in Burlington, to name a few. So this is the only fund of its kind in the state of like a triple Vermont partnership: local installer, local developer, statewide developer, and state investors who provide full disclosure, so that they're not hiding. So in other words, who you're going into partnership, they're going to tell you who is involved. Green Mountain Power, National Life Insurance are a couple of those large investment entities up above. So the fund's really unique in that it's really the only one of its kind that's fund ready and actually deploying these projects in the state. And it's been vetted in and undergone a scrutiny process from legal counsel for a whole range of towns, which is something to be said, because I think Peter can probably advocate for this too. You know, it's confusing. You know, if you don't know what this stuff's all about, you need someone to help you, guide you through the process. Green Lantern Capital has done an exceptional job of providing some support and frameworks for other towns to feel good about the nuts and the bolts of the agreement that you might go into. So those are the partners involved with this proposal that we're looking at. So we actually are kind of offering you two different options under this fund and this partnership. The first one is that we have begun the process of securing a parcel of land in Putney, where we would develop an approximately 156 kW solar array that we would fully finance, develop, operate, maintain, and insure, all basically no cost to the town. And we would sell you back the power, or you would purchase the power at a 10% discount rate. And if you kind of look at that in relationship to what you're buying power at today, that's like an 18% reduction at the kilowatt hour basis for what you're saving. So that could be developed as a Putney-only project, potentially and hopefully in the town boundaries of Putney. So that's one offer that we have to give in this agreement. But the one that I'm most interested in talking with you about and proposing is that we've also secured a larger parcel up in Westminster to develop a 500 kilowatt system. And that system is actually one in which we're going to be bringing in multiple stakeholders. A couple other towns and local schools have already kind of started the process with us of negotiating that deal. So the idea behind that is that, a lot of towns and schools, a lot of people are interested in this stuff, and it's hard to realize those projects, and more importantly, a lot of folks don't have land to do it. And when we do develop multiples of these projects, they encumber big parcels of land, and one of the issues, and we just talked about this at a state meeting recently, is they often encumber large prime ag lands, which is a little bit of a contentious issue. So this parcel that we've identified and already secured for this project is not prime ag land. In fact, it's a perfect site for solar. And so it's ready to be deployed, basically. And so the fund is there, the land is there, and so we're at the point of ready to receive off-takers, of which we would hope Putney would be one of the prime off-takers. And in this deal, you solicited, I don't remember the exact number, 263,000 kilowatt hours or something like that. We would give you all of that. So in other words, the town would be receiving 100% renewable energy from this project site, and you would get it at a discounted payment. So basically, the way to look at it is that you're making no investment. You have almost no risk. I can actually probably tell you what the only risk to you is. And you're just going to be buying power from, instead of Green Mountain Power, you're buying it from another entity at a discounted rate. So it's really, it's not exactly what we call a power purchase agreement, but it's comparable to that. You're engaging in a purchase of power through another entity at a discounted rate. The only risk to you, the only cost to you, is the cost for your legal counsel to review the agreement. And Green Lantern, luckily, will be providing you with your legal counsel with a lot of support. That's the way we've done it with other towns. Is we basically give you references of other counsels from other towns that person can call to understand the nuts and the bolts, a little bit of back and forth, and usually that's a pretty quick remedy as far as understanding and feeling comfortable with those legal things. As we're agreeing to do this development alongside you also embedded in the contract have an appropriations clause, which allows you to get out of the deal. So in other words, you're going to say, I'm going to buy power, you're going to go into the agreement, it's a 20-year term with a 5-year extension, most likely will go beyond that. And if through the scope of that time, you as a town decide you're going to do something different, or the funds aren't there, or the funds are there to do something different, you have an appropriation clause to get it out. One of the things I would just kind of caution you and really encourage you to ask of anybody making a proposal to you is it's not uncommon that entities are making proposals to towns that are not finance transactions. In other words, they're making you an offer and they're presenting you with a discount rate and your financial savings, but then they have to go out and shop the deal. And on the front, that can look pretty good, but in the back end, it may not be even a financeable transaction. And that's, again, a really big difference between what we have here. Is, this fund has been deployed with a number of towns. It's been vetted by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. So it's just got a tremendous backing. It's ready to go. So just encourage you to kind of really look at who's behind the scenes, because you might see potentially a better discount to the town by a couple %, but there's a whole bunch of other things behind the scenes that I would just encourage you to investigate. Who's behind all this stuff, and so that's an important part. So the completion timeline, we didn't make note of that because it just depends on how this unfolds. If you opted to pursue a 150K project, that could happen within this calendar year. If we pursue the 500 kilowatt project, upon which you would also be entering into partnerships with some other towns, and the Putney Central School is one of those entities, that likely won't happen until the spring because of the length of time it takes to permit. That puts us into winter. It'll be a spring event before that really happens. We are also including a purchase option in this deal for you, which allows you at some point, if you were to opt, to exercise a buyout of the equipment, which is kind of a standard practice with a lot of these deals. So right now you're just basically looking to buy power, and that's all you're doing. But if you wanted to at some point realize the 100% benefit of what that system does, you can exercise a buyout option. And those buyout options are typically at years 7, 10, 15, and 20. In my opinion, the reality is that on this deal, on a land that the town doesn't own, it's pretty, in my opinion, pretty unlikely you would ever exercise that, because A, you're going to have to bear the cost of those goods, which, to give you a sense, at year 7, that might be 45% of the system cost. When you were to exercise that, A, you'd have to get out a bond, and you'd have to get the capital campaign to make that happen. But as soon as you do that, you would also then realize that you have to pay the land lease for whatever was brokered with the deal originally, bear the cost of the insurance of the project and all of the associated parts of the insurance, and then as owners, you're responsible for operations and maintenance of that system. It becomes yours. So it's not that that's not possible, and in fact, I advocate that if you could buy it out in the long run, you're way better off. But I think for this deal, and I've seen this structure with other towns, that can be pretty challenging when you don't own the land. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts.
Nick, can you just address that question of the option? It shows option after 5 years for you, but we sort of basically already, I mean, we don't own it, but we do own it. What does the option mean?
The way that we structure it, because the town is not a taxable entity, it can't take advantage of the federal tax credits, which is a 30% discount. So what we do is we retain ownership for the first 5 years, and basically the initial contract that we enter into is a 20-year agreement where you pay the purchase price of the system, and you say, and we give you all of the credit from that for the first 20 years. At year 5, you have the option to own it outright. There's no payment for that option. Basically what you do is trade in your remaining credits and then own the system, and we maintain that system for 50 years. So the option after 5 years for us is really just a way to get that 30% federal tax credit to non-taxable entities.
Just to give you a sense, like, I don't know, Peter, what yours is, option every 7 years. I have 7 years, he has 5. That's what that break point is. It's for the investors. It's for the invested entities to realize.
They make their money in that first 5 to 7 year period, and then,
yeah.
right, okay.
The IRS code says that if they sell during this 5-year holding period, which you should check, it's really a 6-year holding period of the depreciation, then any tax benefits they've gotten are subject to a prorated recapture. Right. So they have to know that they have to own it through the
that
tax
period
depreciation period.
Right.
So we know that's 6 years, so we put in 7 to make sure that there's enough time. If for some reason you wanted it
Some
after 6
little
years,
glitch.
we might be able to work that out. So, me?
Yes.
You're in.
Well, both Michael and my proposal is very different from the Sun Farm in that it doesn't involve an upfront cost. And in your case, you're paying for the sun farm, $3.25 a watt. In our proposal, the IRS requires that the purchase option be at fair market value, but we already closed one of these third-party investor projects with the grammar school. And in that project with the grammar school, they have, their option is set to give them a 9-year payback. Whatever so it looks at what the system actually generated over the whole time that they bought it, that they were leasing it essentially. And then they know that they'll get a certain return on their investment based on the historical production of the system. And that would be at about $1.40 a watt. So we're offering you the system for less than half of what the sun farm cost would be, and you're getting benefits all the way along.
But does that include the cost of paying for electricity for those first 9 years?
They get without any cost at all the benefit of the 12% of the generation that they're not paying for.
But they
So, yeah.
still, for the first 7 years or 9 years for that one? For the first 7 years, they're paying 88% of the cost of electricity. And then after paying basically for electricity for those 7 years, they then enter into the purchase agreement and pay an additional $1.40 per watt to own the system.
No.
No,
During the 7 years, they are essentially receiving a 12% discount on your electric bill.
right, but
You'll
still
get enough
paying,
credits to pay the whole bill.
but still paying the bill.
But the difference between paying that and paying you is that when they pay their electric bill, it's already a bill that they're paying.
Right,
It's
I
not
just
an
wanna be
additional
clear on-
payment. If you have a $50,000 electric bill, under this you'll pay $40,000 and get $10,000 more or less. But you're still paying the $40,000 that you would have been paying anyway.
I get
just wanna be
your
clear
point
when
though.
you're saying
Yeah.
that it's $1.40 a watt, that also takes into account all the that it doesn't take into account the electric bill you've been paying for the past 9 years. Whereas the $3.25 a watt is that, and then there's no electric bill. So you really need to take into account the electricity costs that you've been paying for those past 9 years, add that onto your wattage, and then add whatever $1.40 plus the cost for the past 9 years is.
Sorry,
would
we
be-
might have to go into a bit more detail, but you're just wrong. Because the fact is that they're paying an upfront fee in order to not have an electric bill.
Right.
Okay, they're not paying anything in this one, and they're getting a discount on their electric bill. So they don't have to look, all they can say is, we're not paying anything, and with either Michael's or mine, they're going to receive the savings on their electric bill.
But I think to be fair, Nick's point is that, you know, if you looked at how much money you're going to put out over, you know, say a 15-year period,
Sure.
so, you know, up to, just to pick one of those terms of a buyout time, and you weren't going to buy out any of the systems, but if you were to look at it over 15 years, how much are you going to pay in 15 years? When what you're saying is you're going to pay your electric bill, which in the example you used of if you had a $50,000 bill, now you're going to be paying $40,000 because you've realized that discount.
Yeah.
So for 9 years, you're going to pay $40,000, i.e., you're going to pay $36,000 or $360,000 for that,
Yeah.
and then after that 9 years, you might buy it at $1.40 a watt and not pay any more electric bill, but you've already paid out $360,000.
Right. And
So
that's exactly the point I was making.
I completely agree. And if you look at his proposal, he's proposing to put in 35 kilowatts.
right,
You
no,
know,
I'm not saying this is apples and apples. Right,
But we
no,
can make it apples to apples. It's not
Right.
very difficult to make it apples to apples. You can look at his and you say, okay, we pay
Yep.
$113,000 and we get roughly a sixth of our electric bill covered.
Yep.
You know, and then you don't and you'll always own that 6, but the other 5, 6 you'll go on paying. So you've
Yeah.
got to add that up just the same as you would
Yeah.
in our system. Okay. So, comparison of the two systems. Not a lot to differentiate between us and integrated solar, except that we're offering 2% more discount rate. So if your electric bill is $100,000, you'd save $12,000 with ours, you'd save $10,000 with theirs. Our ground mounts produce at least 10% more power per year because they're manually seasonally adjustable, and we will do that manual adjustment with the maintenance of the system. So you actually, in addition to getting 2% more production because of the discount that we're offering, you'll also get about 10% more production because our system will generate 10% more credits in there as well. So that,
I'm sorry, I have a question whenever we're ready.
what?
I am struggling with if like I'm looking at this savings analysis spreadsheet and I'm like, 1 + 1 = 2, so just okay. So right now I know that we pay per year on average about $44,000 in our electric bill. So if we sign an agreement for a system that produces, let's say in this example, the 338,000 kilowatt hours per year, we're going to be generating $70,000 worth of credit. And we have to then pay 88% of that, of whatever credit. Is that true? And then, so that's $62,000 we would have to pay for that credit.
Right, but you would get a credit.
Yeah.
They would pay you $44,000.
Yeah.
And then the rest of that credit, if there is an excess credit, if you don't bring other people, schools or other people into the system,
Yeah.
You would get a check for that excess credit.
Well, that's what I just asked.
Yeah, and they answer
And
you, and I'll just answer you a little different.
Okay,
I have insurance in writing from Green Mountain Power that they will continue to write that check. But even if you didn't get the check,
Okay.
you're receiving power at a 10%, at a 12% discount.
Great, but my cash flow is 62.
I understand.
Okay.
So, but you have an extra credit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then you could get anyone else in Putney or anywhere else in Green Mountain Power territory who has an electric bill to put their meter into your group, and you could allocate the excess credit to them, and they would pay you that money.
So then we would have to be in an agreement with somebody else too. So then now we're
If
selling
you
power
would.
to somebody.
I'm surprised to hear the 44,000 number because I thought we were told that your bill needed 200 kilowatts of production to offset it.
Well, the
Kilowatt hours.
kilowatt hours.
So we can certainly scale this,
So-
this proposal down
Okay, that's what
to
I was.
match exactly. If you don't want excess generation, we can scale the proposal.
Which is sort of the point you were making previously.
I would really
Yeah.
highly advocate that you don't get into that kind of a scenario where you become a power seller.
Yeah.
And
Right.
You don't want to do that.
I mean, if I was going to get a check from Green Mountain Power for the difference, then but I wouldn't want it.
The other thing I would just state that I don't know if it's totally true as to what Peter was saying is that you don't own that system.
Right.
So the credits in excess of what's produced on that system isn't going into your utility account. It's going into the investor's utility account. And you are, as the way I would approach it, we're going to give you exactly what you need.
Yeah.
But that's on a separate meter owned by somebody else. And so if you have excess power on that, it's their responsibility to allocate those credits to somebody else. That's how I deal with it.
Okay.
We don't want you to get into a scenario where you are having that kind of overproduction. If you have a third-party financer, they own that meter until or unless you exercise the buyout.
So, Peter, are you proposing that there would be a third-party financer? You are, aren't you? Yes. And
However, I disagree with you. Under the net metering statute, they own the system, but we have the ability to allocate the credits to whatever meters we want. So the system will generate credits at Green Mountain Power, and those can be allocated to your meters or anyone else's meters, and you have the control. You have complete control of the allocation of those of those credits.
But then we're becoming a broker for those credits,
If
which,
we do-
right,
if we build-
if we oversize the
If you
system.
oversize the
Right,
system.
okay.
And if you choose to do that, you can allocate those credits. I mean, you might want to do it and allocate the credit to the school,
To the select board.
to the select board. You know, to anybody else who wants to get a 10%
Did you get that on
discount
camera?
on their-
That was a joke.
Well, actually, I'll tell you, the town of Cavendish, we're under contract with them to put in a 150 kilowatt system, which is a little bit more than they need, but they actually want to put in a second one and offer the town's
To the town.
ability
Huh.
to anybody in the town who wants to be able to participate in the system.
There's just more administrative.
There's
It's a
more
choice of whether you
administration.
want to get into that. Yeah.
So, from the point of view of the deal, you know, we're offering you a better deal. We're going to give you more, you'll get to retain more of the credits than under that one. And the system that we put in, at whatever size we put it in, will generate, well, no, we'll put in a system that will generate what you need. When it comes time to buy it out, its nameplate rating of the DC wattage will be 10% less than theirs. And there's every reason to suspect that the option price would therefore be 10% less also. So the fact that we're putting in adjustable ground mounts so that they harvest more sunlight will turn out to be a benefit for you as well.
And who is that third person
We have two
investor?
groups of investors who are working with us, and it's not clear which one of them. They've both given us a letter of commitment. We're under contract to put in a 500 kilowatt project for the Brattleboro School Board and for the town of Cavendish, 150. And we're just working out the final details of that. But even, I really appreciate Michael's saying you really want to know if it's financeable. But I was talking with the head of his fund last week, and he said both National Life and Green Mountain Power have dropped out of their fund. So, you know, I really see this as there's a kind of a catch-22, which is that until we have a contract with the town, we won't get any financer to sign an agreement to fund it. And until we have a financer, we won't get a town to sign an agreement. So you got to move both of those kind of toward each other together. And by saying that about Green Lantern, that Green Mountain Power and National Life have dropped out, I have every confidence that Michael will get his financer. I've been watching Green Lantern and the work that they're doing, and I think that they have a really good, solid shot at doing it. I have an equal level of confidence that we will provide the same level of financing.
I have a question about the Westminster location. That's a larger system, and you said that wouldn't be until spring, possibly, because of the permitting process, right?
The way
Has the permitting process started?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so that one, I mean, the reason I'm excited about that, I mean, I would fully understand why Putney might want to engage in just doing their own thing. I get that. The beauty of that project to me is that we're bringing the Putney Central School and a couple other local townships and maybe even another school. Everyone's coming in together on one deal to have one impact on one site, and they're all going to get the same benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I just see more and more that those types of partnerships make a big difference. In this case, if the town opted to exercise this agreement and Putney Central School, within 1 year, the entire, largest, energy users in the township that the taxpayers support are all getting discounted renewable energy, which is, there's a lot to be said about that.
Lisa, you had that.
Yeah, I was just wondering if, hi.
Hi.
I was just wondering, for the 200 kilowatt hours or $44,000 worth of electricity that the town uses, how many collectors is that, and how much space does that take up? And you were alluding to specific locations, and I was just wondering if each of you guys had a specific location in mind for these, and how much space?
Well, for my project, community solar array, that one's currently under construction. It's just under an acre of space, and it's out on Route 5 on Sands Lane. And that, but it's different. It's not really an answer to the question of how much space does it take up for the 40,000, because the 35 kilowatts that I'm proposing for the town is well
Small piece.
below
Yeah.
what they would actually be using. It's just to offset a part of it. I don't know if you guys.
The one option, if the 156 or so KW system that we would do in town for the town of Putney would take about an acre of land. The one in Westminster that we're bringing multiple parties in on, that's about a 5-acre parcel.
And sorry, you said this parcel, this potential one in Putney, you have a parcel, don't have a parcel?
We're in the land lease negotiation phase, so that's why I'm saying potential.
Okay.
We've been having that negotiation for a little while now. The one in Westminster, we've already secured it and it's underway. So that project's going to get developed, and we've already started talking with some other select boards, nearby, and the Putney Central School and some other schools. So it's a matter in that case of who decides to get in on the power benefit of that.
In time,
deal.
yeah. And Peter, that same question for you.
Same size.
Right,
About
location
an acre.
and
We're talking with a couple of landowners, but we didn't.
don't have anything solid yet.
We don't have it solid because we don't have. It's
Right.
another one of those.
All the players are not
comes
involved.
first, you know.
Yeah.
Again, the law is set up so that the systems could be anywhere in Green Mountain Power territory, which is basically everything south of 89,
Right.
almost. But it would probably be preferable to have it here where people can look at it and get the pride of saying this is Putney's renewable energy system.
Yeah. Well, we've spent about our 45 minutes on this discussion. Either of you guys have other questions specifically?
I think we need to rehash.
Yeah.
Right.
Once again, notes I made earlier. I mean, this is more just nuts and bolts, perhaps. But I noticed that for the bonus solar credit rate, they seem to stop. The extra 6 cents seem to stop in 10 years, and that's just how it is.
Yeah.
So that there's no possibility of that continuing.
There is a possibility it was established by the legislature
Okay.
to last for 10 years.
That's what it's slated at. That's why most folks you present what we know today.
Right.
Will it continue? We would all hope so.
Okay.
And in your case, that's irrelevant. Is that
No,
right?
you still get the 6 cents. You get all of the power credits produced by the
Okay, I see. Yeah, yeah.
They get all the profit? They
Yeah.
have to rent.
Yep. If they own the panels, they would get all of the power produced by their panels.
That question of the manual adjustment, is Peter's statement accurate that that's roughly a 10% increase? And if so, is that?
There's a lot of factors that go into it. They definitely do produce more than panels that are fixed. At 10%, maybe, maybe not.
But ballpark, that's right. I'm not questioning that, Peter. I'm just wondering, like, why you guys, do you consider that? Do you?
Yeah, I mean, so the real question there for me, again, I would almost say, unless you're really pretty sure that at some point the town's going to buy it out, it doesn't matter to you under the frameworks that we're proposing, because you're just buying power. You're getting it at a discounted rate. It doesn't matter how it's produced. You're getting a discounted power rate. That's the reality, day one. When and if you exercise the buyout, that starts to come into play.
Right. That's
So I don't know. Our
discounted.
company, we explored seasonally adjustable tilt mounted, and we collected data on them for a while, and we never saw a leap over 3 to 6, 7% max of an additional benefit. We've done dual access trackers, which can exceed the highest we've seen. That's about 33% of additional power benefit for a dual access tracker. We've taken the position that we don't really do those anymore.
It's a lot of expense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My data comes, we did the installation at Paul Harlow's
Mhm.
farm with the seasonally adjustable. It's a half a mile down the road from the installation at Green Mountain Power's
Fixed, yeah.
fixed station. And for the 3 years that we've had data, we've gotten 15% more power than the Green Mountain Power installation. So that's as close to apples as we can get. Might be good one day for us to go out and put a fixed array next to one of our seasonally adjustable so they're right next to
And
each other.
put it on, yeah, makes sense.
I mean, it does it for 2 reasons. The panel being perpendicular to the sun gets it to harvest more, but the other thing is that in the winter ours are tilted up to 65 degrees, so snow just falls right off them and you don't lose any production to having the panels covered with snow.
Have you all explored this idea of a purchase option much? And does that come up in dialogue as to what your position might be on that?
This is really the first real dialogue I think we've had. Don't you think? I mean, we
Right.
talked about it briefly, but
Yeah, I mean, I think that
We're fishing.
yeah, but I think the general consensus is that we don't, at this stage anyway, want to be in the ownership of solar installation. That may change. And we have looked at town sites that are possibilities, et cetera. And, in the future, those are certainly options for us. But I think that, if the financial end of it is sort of equal and we don't have to own them, that's probably a logical choice for us.
Yeah, and like I said, who you're embarking on an agreement with, too.
Yeah.
The only other question I have, I guess, in general, personally, I know the technology of this stuff, has rapidly advanced over the last 10 years, say. What's to say that in 5 years from now, these panels become kind of obsolete because something else comes along that produces, 20 times more or whatever, or the town could purchase, solar shingles for, stuff like that. I mean, I don't know enough about it, but I've been curious about that. It's hard to invest in long-term things.
Reasonable question. The thing is that these panels are going to be producing power very likely for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that power is going to be valuable. So they're not going to become obsolete because they're still going to be valuable.
Right.
It's possible that in 10 years you could put in some panels that would generate more power than these. And then you'd want to look at, if you have another site, you'd be better off putting those panels on another site and keeping these panels. There's no reason to replace them as long as they're still functioning.
Yeah, that's right. You're buying valuable power, you're getting it at a discounted rate, and there it is. Again, under this deal, like if say in 10 years that there was a game changer that just knocked the pants out of the solar industry, you got an appropriation clause to get out of the deal. Say, okay, we're going to go do this other thing now.
Well,
so the only question for me is how do we go so that we can tell them how do we go from here?
well, I think that we still have plenty of homework to do. So, I'm
I
not.
can gather questions from you guys and.
Well, I think what we need to do as best as possible is do that apples to apples comparison on a, whether it's a cost per watt or how much we're going to spend over a 20-year period or something along those lines so that we can reasonably analyze the data with an accurate comparison, and whether we'll recruit somebody to help us with that or whether, Cynthia is pretty adept with finances, so we might be able to, working with somebody who understands the systems a little bit more, we might be able to arrive at that. But I think that's going to be, our sort of primary obligation is to the taxpayers and to spend our budget appropriately. So, given that all of you guys are of good repute and, people who we would presumably be comfortable working with, we need to see what the numbers say. So we'll have to figure out how to do that as sort of rapidly as we can, and we'll work on that. So we'll be in touch as soon as we can. Abe.
Abe Noe is, I have a question about the inflation rate that you're using, 4 or something or 5%. I'm just thinking about what I remember about power rates, which is just, in my experience paying a power bill, that I thought it had been around 15 cents or so for years and years. Is that not true? Am I remembering that wrong?
Yeah. It, the rate changes, I can just give you a sheet of historical electricity
Okay.
costs over the last 40 years,
Okay.
but it's been around 3% for the last 10 years. When the Arab oil embargo happened, the price of electricity from 1974 to 1982 tripled from 2 cents to 6 cents. It probably jumped ahead of where the market needed to be, and it's slowed down since then, but over that whole period of time, it's been going up.
So it's about variability in the inflation rate.
Right.
Okay.
And
So we've been in a period of low inflation, but you're saying that may increase.
yeah, and there are some factors that are at play. One of them is that even if the wholesale cost of electricity to Green Mountain Power were to go down, their wholesale cost of electricity only represents a third of what you pay. You pay 15 cents, they pay 5 cents to buy it and 10 cents to distribute it to you. And their distribution costs aren't going down. Their labor costs, their materials costs, all of those. And we don't have natural gas, which is the only fuel source whose price is going down. The other thing that's in play here is that compared to the cost of oil, when oil is at $4 a gallon and electricity is at 14 cents, it costs the same to plug a space heater into the wall as it does to buy oil to heat. So if oil goes over $4 a gallon, it's going to be cheaper for everybody to plug space heaters in than to buy oil. And when an oil boiler breaks, they're not going to replace it for $8,000. They can replace it for $50 thing. But there's nowhere near enough electricity in the Vermont grid to heat Vermont with electricity. And so we'll turn into a third world country with rolling brownouts, and the only thing the legislature can do is put a surcharge on the cost of electricity to keep it higher than the relative cost of oil. And we're so close to that point now that I can easily imagine surcharges on electric costs coming soon, which will just make people who put in solar systems feel better and better.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Very informative. Very helpful.
I'm certainly available. I'm sure that you're going
Yeah.
to answer any questions,
Yeah.
come back in.
Yeah.
If you do come up with an apples to apples sheet, I'm sure all three of us would like to look at it and see if we
Yeah,
agree.
that sounds fair. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Howard? Yeah. Hang
I'm
on.
sorry, Peter. I know that Nick is getting close. Is there a time, like, are your appeals on the table for 2 months, 6 months, however long it takes these guys to figure it out?
For the smaller one that we're offering, we would get that done before winter
I
time.
think you're saying if they don't make their
If they don't make
decision for 4
decisions,
months,
no,
are we committed to keeping this on the table?
I mean, I know that Nick is getting filled up.
Yeah, that's right. So the one offer that we have to provide to the town for the 150 kW, that would probably be long withstanding because that would be specifically identified and targeted for the town. The other one, we're moving ahead on the development of that one. So that project will happen, and we would hope town of Putney would partner with some of these other local towns.
How are you going to handle it if it takes them a couple months? For them to decide.
Well, he'll either have some space left for us or not, I would
Yeah.
guess.
I mean, honestly, if you like the two approaches, I would sell myself short, because you could buy
Do both.
35 kW
Yeah.
from him and then go
Yeah.
get the balance from one
You
side.
certainly could. The 35 is kind of the maximum amount that we have left in this array. You could buy 5, you could buy a couple panels. We
Right.
have plenty of people in town who have 1 or 2 panels.
Yeah.
That's not going to put a huge dent in the town's energy bill, but be able to support the community project.
Peter, same question.
There are some tax implications. There's a 50% accelerated depreciation bonus that expires at the end of this year. And I would have to go back to my investors and ask them if we can't get it completed by the end of the year, whether we would have to change the discount rate.
So it would be, that's valid for completion, not for initiation of the project?
Yeah, for completion. And we figure that we need 2.5 months, maybe 3 months, we probably would need to know. We'd love to know as soon as possible.
That's
Yeah,
why
of
we're
course.
not gonna
Because-
drive.
Yeah, no, we don't
Too
want
long.
to. We don't want to drag it out.
Yeah.
You know, if any sort of wrench gets thrown in the works, then we'll figure out how to approach that. But
I mean, we can always run into wrenches, like if we find a piece of land and then we apply for the certificate of public good, if one of the neighbors objects,
Right.
all of a sudden the
Then
process has gotten months
longer.
longer than it was otherwise, and we have no control over that.
yeah,
And part of that has to do is when do you lock the agreement in?
yeah,
You have a process, and then there'll be a process of reviewing the agreements,
Right.
nuances, all that stuff.
good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a little bit smarter than I was. It's getting there. It's
Not
getting
smarter, just better educated.
there. Okay, thank you.
It is tough to
Process.
absorb all that
Yeah.
stuff.
All right.
You guys can all move up now.
Turn the chair to the town clerk's office.
Well, no, you can even leave that there.
Where are all the extra chairs?
Well, they're there.
These are really comfortable.
Oh, good evening,
We'll put Isaac.
Right. Trust me, right.
No, you don't need to
Trust me,
sit right up in the front
an hour and a
row.
half of those.
Yeah, you're next. So if you want to.
Well, and I'm not even Irish, I mean, I'm just here.
And I don't know whether Isaac, do we have a format for this, or are you
Nope.
just talking to us, or
I'm
what
going
are
to
we?
talk to you, I'm going to keep it as short as possible, and I'm going to hope for some questions.
And I'll just give a overview. There has been discussion previously in the within the Affordable Housing Committee about whether it would be possible to do an affordable housing situation at 27 Old Depot Road, which is the large blue building out behind People's Bank, basically, and that has been up for discussion several times over the years. It's been looked into previously, didn't make sense, but as Lisa had accurately questioned, you know, sort of have we bypassed the Affordable Housing Committee? The answer is no. The Windsor Housing Trust has been sort of exploring this, and we're going to find out whether some of it's coming to fruition or what's going on.
Well, thank you. So my intention was to actually come next week's meeting, to talk with you guys.
But we didn't. We're not having one. So.
And it was also my intention to visit the Affordable Housing Committee soon after that, which I got your recommendation to do it. But as of this point, it seems like everybody in Putney knows about the project already, so here I am today. So let me start by just apologizing in advance for what is an apparent breach of protocol, and that is my fault. There was a notice for the environmental review that went in last week's paper. There really shouldn't have, or at the very least, I should have cleared it with you before it did. And that was a ball that I dropped, and I take responsibility for that. And perhaps the greatest irony about that is I have to re-release that notice because it was wrong anyway. So at the end of my comments and the end of this meeting, hopefully I can get permission from you to put that back out in the weekend paper and start that process all over again. Before I talk more about the project, let me tell you what we've done in the last 2 weeks besides that notice. We have completed a feasibility study on the project. We've submitted a grant application to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board for that project, and we have actually completed an environmental review process. All of that happened last week, and what I had wanted to do was have that behind us before I spoke with you, so I knew that there were no hiccups, that we had a project that would work, and that we were effectively ready to go, had a development timeline in place before I brought it to you. So that's all good news. The good news is our feasibility study tells us that we have a project, and we have financing for it, and we're going to begin to pursue it.
And do you have you don't own the property, but you have a purchase and sales agreement?
We have an
or
option on it now.
Option. Okay.
And you know, we've been working in pretty close coordination with the sellers down there as well, and they've been pretty supportive of you know, of us to a certain point. Now, you know, it's a pretty long-term agreement. What we don't envision beginning construction down there until this time next year. This environmental review notice that went out last week is for a grant, a CDBG grant that I will ask you about in a little while, that we hadn't anticipated applying for until December of this year. So we kind of had a long timeline, and thankfully, up to this point, we have a pretty patient seller, and so we're keeping our fingers crossed that will continue. You may recall from a few years ago, one of our issues has been in talking with the Affordable Housing Committee subsequent to our basketball proposal, working with the Affordable Housing Committee. One of our issues has always been scale. For these projects, it's scale. You've heard us say it over and over again. We can't do 5-unit projects anymore. We can't do 6-unit projects. We're going to have them bigger. So what we have done on this project is paired this building with 2 buildings in Brattleboro, 2 buildings that we already own in Brattleboro.
And just for the record, this building is currently 15 units, is that correct?
Currently 12.
12.
Yeah. And our proposal right now is to make it 11. I believe we went back and forth on that. It's going to be either 11 or 12. We want to let our yet to be completed market study dictate. It kind of breaks down one section of the building, either being 2 very small units or one nicely sized big unit, and so we just want to let our market study kind of dictate which way we go on that one. So it'll be 11 or 12 when we finish. The 2 buildings in Brattleboro are buildings we already own. They take that are going to require a relatively small amount of rehab. So hopefully that ameliorates the relatively high cost of the rehab on this building here in Putney. So that would bring us to a 28 or 29 unit project. Total, it's a 25 unit project. It's a total 25 unit project. So that gets us the scale we need to do it moving forward. So the request to the board, and it doesn't necessarily have to be approved today, but that would be to apply on behalf of the Windsor Housing Trust for a CDBG grant in the December application. I think it's due in December. The application round due in December, and that's what we would need to support this project. Those funds would obviously only be allocated for construction for this building. They wouldn't be wrapped in to the Brattleboro building. So the other financing would do both, but CDBG would just be for the Putney building. So with that synopsis, are there any questions I could answer for anybody? Because Josh is looking a little concerned.
Well, no, I'm just wondering what I also just CDBG Community Development Block Grant for those who might not know. Competitive application process. Do we know how big the pool is? Do we know how much we're asking for? And what would that money be specifically for construction, or would it be a combination of engineering and construction, or what are we asking for money for?
Well, what we would ask for, the request at this point, is what I'm thinking. This is what our notice was written for, by the way, I think. What we'd be asking for is $300,000. All the rounds in CDBG are competitive. This is a regular cycle CDBG. This is not the disaster recovery that we see floating around now. What is interesting is that disaster money has taken some pressure off of the regular cycle CDBG lately. I don't know if that will continue through the end of the year, but at least lately, in this next round coming up in a few weeks, that is the case. So yeah, it's going to be competitive. This is a compelling project. This is a compelling community to do affordable housing in. All the funders know about it. This building in particular has a deep and meaningful history in this community. It's a downtown project. It's an affordable housing project. It has a really nice site. I mean, there's a lot going for it. So I think we're going to be competitive in the CDBG round. Of course, CDBG is all about community input. CDBG paid for the planning grant that the housing committee utilized to study. So I think it's going to be compelling for the CDBG round. The tax credit round that happens in February is probably going to be more competitive for us. But that is not something that the town sponsors. That's not our responsibility to go for. That's what we have now. So what I do typically with CDBG is I allocate all that money for construction purposes. I mean, you can use it for admin, for relocation, you can use it for soft costs, you can use it for anything you want. It's just it's a lot easier on us administratively to just allocate it for construction. So then when they do subsequent monitoring, they're just looking over our construction paperwork and they're just looking at what we did. So for a variety of reasons, we try to say we're only going to use it for construction. We're only going to use it for construction on this building. Does that answer your questions?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to back up just a second, if you don't mind, and talk about the environmental review process. As I said, I'm going to renotice it. The environmental review is the same as the one that's been on file here at the town office for the last week. That's not going to change. We didn't come up with any environmental conditions, which makes us, or hopefully will make HUD think poorly of the property. I think and when I say environmental conditions, you can take a look at that document and get a sense of what I would look at. Noise pollution, steep slopes, and endangered species, and agricultural soils, and all this other stuff that are federal statutes and state statutes that we look at. There's been a sea change, however, in Vermont very, very recently in how we pursue environmental reviews. And this is coming from HUD. And what's happening is there's a couple of things. First of all, the level of due diligence has gotten incredibly high. So we're under a lot of pressure to prove it. In the past we would just say, it's not in an airport clear zone, or it's not in a wild and scenic river, because the only wild and scenic river in the Northeast is the Allagash in Maine, so clearly it's not. Well, now we have to actually go through and find sources to back up our claims, paper backup for each one of these things. About 60 to 70% of them are ridiculous and time consuming to find that paperwork to do. The other percentage, it's a meaningful exercise. We got to go through and talk with department heads, talk with experts, and figure out what it is. To exacerbate matters, they're making us do this now before we make application in the CDBG round. In the past, we made the CDBG application and then did this between the time that they approved our money and the time we closed on a project. So what happened is we had these standardized processes, these standardized public notices that we just put in the paper, because the town had already, the legislative body, the town had already approved the grant, approved going for it, approved accepting it, and so it wasn't a big deal. And so that's the reason, this is some of my feeble excuse for why I just threw that notice out there last week, because that's the process I've been using for years. Oh yeah, it's just another one of those environmental notices. I put it out there and I didn't make contact with you like I would. Now, we are the first in the state, I confirmed this with Josh Hanford the other day, we're the first in the state to go through this new process. So we've had a lot of pressure on us to figure out how to do it, and the others are kind of waiting and watching us and watching our mistakes. And in fact, the CDBG round has been delayed, this current round has been delayed while they figure out their online system to make the environmental review come first and the actual application come second. So, it's been pretty tough. So I'm hoping it's behind us and that we get our environmental clearance and that we can move forward on this. So.
I think it's going to make the whole process less competitive this round because people aren't going to be running out there to spend that money on the risk that they might not get the environmental money. And as you say, it's going to be more expensive because of all this due diligence, and you haven't even applied yet.
Yeah, the due diligence itself hasn't incurred a lot of expense for us. I mean, a lot of staff, no doubt about it. But we haven't hired a lot of
That's because you
consulting.
guys have the staff.
Well, we have staff that
Other-
has it. Right,
Other
right.
municipalities aren't.
That's true. We do have it. There's been 2 of us, myself and my coworker Betsy, have been working on this for quite a while. So. Anyone else have any questions?
No, I guess one of the things is because this notice is going to go in the paper again. Do you have a new packet for me with any date changes you had mentioned to me the other day?
What we're going to do is we're going to wait until, if it's okay with you, we're going to wait until Saturday to put it in Saturday's people. We're going to put it in right tomorrow, but thought it occurred to me maybe to say no today, so I said let's wait until Saturday. So I'll get you a new packet. I think it's just a cover page that has some date changes that we need to make, and we'll make sure to get those to you on Friday so that they're here.
So then I guess it's up
When
to
the
them
board
if
of people
they're-
comes in on Monday morning to review it, because it's on Saturday's paper. So.
I was so glad Lisa called me the other day, or whoever it was that called
Well,
me.
I happen to be sitting in a group
Yeah,
that
that's
reads those notices religiously every day. I have a question. I don't know if you know, the notice actually referenced home funds,
Yes.
and is that what the money VHCB is?
Yeah.
And is that for acquisition?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure if we're using home funds for acquisition.
That's a separate piece. There's the CDBG piece, which you're.
Yeah, and the notice is a combined notice. This notice covers 2 different funding. Our 2 federal funding sources we have, home and CDBG. And that's the funny thing. We went back and forth with department heads in Montpelier for probably 3 weeks on this notice, and it didn't occur to any of us that we should call you guys first. Because it's very, very specifically worded to accommodate 2 different federal funding sources. So, yeah. Was that a
No, yeah, sort of.
So what do you need from us? You need approval to put this notice in the paper, or not? Not really. I mean, do we?
Yeah, I don't need
Do
a
we
formal-
technically have any say? We don't.
No, you absolutely have say. I mean, if you say no, I won't put it in the paper. If
Say-
you allow me to do this, what I really would like is a confirmation from you about whether you would support this project, the town will support this project with a CDBG grant. That's what I would like. And this is a resultant part of that, the environmental review.
And remind me, do we have to have any sort of is this a public hearing about that?
No, this
and
is
or
not.
do we have to have a public hearing
will.
before applying for a CDBG
I
grant?
mentioned it.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll have to conduct a public hearing in the fall. We'll have to have a legislative body approval. We'll have a resolution. It's a template form resolution from you all. We'll have to actually complete the application, which falls on us. You guys will press the send button on the electronic application, but I'll actually compose the whole thing. In addition, in the same time period in the fall, we'll probably come in front, or maybe winter, fall or winter, we'll come in front of the DRB here and make our proposal to the local DRB, which I believe is also a public format. So we have a bunch of public opportunity here. But what I've done with other communities is just ask the select board for, I guess, a thumbs up. Like, I think we can support this CDBG application, and allow our staff to open up the electronic application form for you. And with that, I move forward, and then in the future we'll seek the resolutions and we'll go through public hearing process as well.
So this is a non-binding, but just a yes, we're likely to support it as long as nothing really gruesome appears between now and when we're actually doing it.
Yeah, that's my feeling. Yeah.
Sound fair?
Sounds good to me.
I think we certainly have been looking for and hoping for some affordable housing in Putney or additional affordable help from Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, and I personally am glad you guys are doing this and hopeful that it is successful in all ways. But we clearly have good.
Yeah.
No, it's a good fit.
Select board support as well. So
Well, thank you very much for that.
thank you.
Thanks for
That
coming out
building
tonight.
has a lot of history.
Mm-hmm.
Back when it belonged to Wyndham College, they were very generous about, we had it was before when there was just like a community kindergarten that parents paid for. That was held there. There were lots of women's liberation groups that met there that I remember, lots of, they allowed space for various kinds of groups.
And actually, it was built by Dr. Laura Plans, who was the first female doctor in Vermont, first licensed female
Oh,
doctor
really?
in Vermont.
Oh,
It was
that's
her residence, so that might
that's
kind of lend
interesting.
to some of its history.
Oh.
And we have actually staff in our office who went to Wyndham College there, when it was Wyndham College. So
Yeah.
And we walked through it several months ago, and they were like,
I lived in an
Yeah.
apartment in that building
Yeah.
once many years ago.
Yeah, and you hear a lot of that around us. So,
Okay.
All right, well, thank
Good.
you all very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, Isaac.
I have one other question. I assume it's way too late at this point, but, I mean, if the Affordable Housing Committee, working with you, came up with another property, a smaller number of units, is there any opportunity to add property in budget?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, if the Affordable Housing Committee might
Should meet.
get back together and talk about that possibility, because we had talked about a scattered site at one point.
Yeah.
We needed all the affordable housing we could get.
Yes.
Yeah, well, the one thing we were seeking out,
It's too bad the basketball.
we're separately we're on a project to rehab some of the first projects that the Housing Trust did in the late '80s and early '90s, and which haven't had a lot of input, a lot of capital maintenance done on them since we built them. And this in some ways supports that because it bolsters that portfolio that we have. At the same time, the relatively low cost of what we have to do on our projects bolsters the relatively high cost that we have to spend. So it's been a match, a pretty good match. So the only thing I would say is, if you throw a couple buildings at me, don't throw the toughest ones at us for this project.
Yeah.
Save that for the next one.
Right, okay. Okay,
But otherwise, yeah, let us know.
okay.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you want me to do anything with trying to get the Affordable Housing Committee back together at all, just to even talk about?
I think so, I mean, I don't know. We haven't had it a long time.
No, I know, yeah.
It's not a great time of year, but we
it's
can
in
call a meeting and see what happens.
Right. Let me just pick people's brains. And this may go nowhere, but
Right.
it seems like
Right, but
time
it would
is
be a
of the
good
essence
time.
if there is any other possibility out there.
Yeah.
I can send out a letter to the ones that were on the committee, the list, and just kind of pick a date and see what happens. If you want to give me a date that works for you, because, or, a few of you that I know want to be there, but.
I don't think I'm around the
Okay.
rest of August.
So,
I
yeah.
except weekends, but
It may even be early September.
I'll be here then too.
Okay.
We would probably, yeah. the longer we wait, the less, I mean, I'm guessing that it's probably not very realistic to think of something that would
Probably
be coupled
not.
with this, but
He didn't say.
but he didn't say no.
He didn't say
Yeah.
no.
Yeah,
We can do that.
good. You're not staying?
My,
I was kidding.
You were right on me, but you
I have to bike down here. This is my exercises.
See you later. Thanks.
Welcome, Steve.
All right. Feel good award?
I just wanted to just let you guys know what happened with the fuel bid. We ended up going with discount oil. For the past couple years, we've kind of connected with the supervisory union and the schools and jumped on with theirs. Well, when I talked to Jim Kane about doing that again, he was holding off until like July, and then this tar sands question, I asked him that. So I decided to go out with a bid of our own and see what we got, and see if we got, made one of the bid requirements to let us know where they get their oil from, just to try to satisfy that vote from last town meeting. So I learned my lesson a little bit on the dollar value of, because we're not on with the school, ours is a little bit more.
Well, the school's also they're buying
Yeah.
a lot less.
So we ended up, actually, Discount Oil was the only one that actually gave us any information on tar sands, which was very vague. They think it doesn't come from that, but they can't, they said Gulf oil not believed to be from tar sands is what the rest of them didn't even answer the question. So then I went with price. By the time I called them back, it was maybe a week after I got it. By the time I called them back, it had jumped up a little bit. So it's 3.309 a gallon. So I think the school might be a little bit under too.
Does the school even use much oil anymore?
Well, this is the whole.
It's the district.
It's the
Oh, the district. Oh,
Right.
I see. Oh, okay.
And I think they also use a certain amount to fire things
Yeah.
up.
So, and Discount Oil is
And
currently
and
our
as a
provider,
backup
so
in case there's any kind of
we
breakdown.
ended up
I know
using
that
it.
was
Cheapest.
certainly the case with the high school when they went
It's
to
not
the
cheap, though,
chip.
is it?
No, it's not. And when I called another vendor back who had a lower price. By the time I called him, it had jumped up like 10 cents. So this bidding process for oil, unless you take it the day
Right.
that they give you
The
so
bid.
I learned a valuable lesson.
Don't wait.
Don't wait.
Although-
Or jump on with the school in the beginning.
Right. No,
Is what I should have
because we've been through this before, and in fact, I think 3 years ago, we waited it out, and we came out way ahead on our gamble.
Right, we were
Yeah.
right, but
You
it
know.
was definitely we were playing cards there a little bit with
Yeah.
Yeah. The
And
tar
it's
sands
because
question
it's so volatile.
was
it's
really
very
just
difficult.
something that they just kind of,
Right. If
Oh,
you
they
want to
don't
know
have-
this, you
if
don't
you-
have to buy our oil. Right.
so.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well,
I thought that was interesting that when it gets up to about $4, the electricity starts
breaking even.
breaking
Yeah,
even.
that is interesting.
I think I'm going to see some more figures on that, but just from occasionally running, heaters on some jobs and things like that.
And then seeing the
right.
electric bill
Right.
is staggering.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Although at
Right.
$4 a gallon, the oil bill.
Well,
is
that's true.
staggering, too.
That's
So-
that's a lot of.
So that's really all I
5
wanted to
gallon
say.
cans
about
going in
fuel.
there.
I was kind of upset with
So,
myself, but
so we went ahead with
I
that.
did. I called her and said, send me a contract, but, before it creeps up more.
Yeah.
I did try to jump on with the school towards the very end, and she was like, no, you can't do that now. So
How much oil do we use? This is for
45. It's based on 4,500 gallons.
45 minutes for your
It's
live.
it's the library, the fire
Fire
station, the town garage here. That's it. Those four,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
And what it doesn't include is vehicle fuel.
Right.
Oh, right.
That's
This is
which
just
we
fuel.
use a lot of.
Yeah.
It seems to me, wasn't 45 low previously? I thought one year we were pushing.
Well, we had that question from a vendor that at one year he
like
called me
50,
and said,
like 55.
are
or
you
something.
sure this number is right?
Yeah.
But there was one year when we had 2 libraries and 2 fire stations going. So there was, that might be the year that people are thinking of, but last year it was even a little bit under 4. Was it last year that was under? Maybe it was, yeah. So, yeah.
Good.
That's that. Yeah, go back now.
So we move on to cemetery mowing. We don't have any cemetery commissioners here. So our discussion is
See you, Howard.
limited. Thanks, Howard. See ya. Our discussion is limited to sort of the information we have about what's going on with cemetery mowing, and any concerns that might be surrounding that. So, do you want to?
Do you want me to update you on
Yeah.
what? It was, as we all know, a few months ago or a couple, I don't even remember when it was, we had the discussion about workers' compensation insurance for subcontractors. I've been waiting for a workers' compensation certificate from one of the people that mows our cemetery. I called him and he said he's not getting it, that he had told the cemetery commissioners that he was not going to get it. So at this point right now, I've added him to our insurance, our workers' comp insurance, just because I didn't feel like he's been doing it. He's been doing it for us for years. We've added him before, and it was in the middle of a season, and he had gotten conflicting information from me and cemetery commissioners. So on what he had to have. So I felt it was best to keep him on and not put him in the middle of that. So I guess from you guys, I mean, our only options at this point right now, if the policy isn't going to be followed, then for this year I think we're all set, but we need to talk about, you know, should the cemetery purchase their, if they're going to set different policy, purchase their own insurance for the coverage of the maintenance of the cemetery, which is unfortunate. That I'm sure it would
Cost more.
cost more, but because as a select board, when the town votes to have cemetery commissioners, the select board's responsibility and requirements and really your oversight of the cemetery, it does not exist anymore.
It's
You
not
don't
existent,
have legally
right.
the ability to do that.
Right.
So
But
we can't.
and we don't.
Well, we must make an allocation. In other words, we control the purse string. We still make an allocation to the cemetery commission.
Yes, but once it's
Once
theirs.
a year, I presume. You know, it's basically it's a budgetary line item.
Exactly. So it's a recommendation that we make, but then it's voter approved. I mean, unless the voters vote down the cemetery commission budget, then presumably they've got.
Right. So once that appropriation's made and it's in the cemetery commissioner's hands to disperse the money,
Right.
then that we relinquish all authority or duties really over that. So by statute,
So,
we don't
but just
have
to
the,
put it in a little historic perspective, the cemetery commission, when this we acquired, what was
Mount
this?
Pleasant.
And it became town, and this issue arose, we were asked for some guidance from the cemetery commission.
Mhm.
Obviously, we made a decision after considerable amount of discussion this spring, and I mean, it's sort of, you know, we were asked and we gave our advice, and therefore we've been ignored in effect.
But as Cynthia is
So-
accurately pointing out, we don't have.
We do not have.
it's
but-
kind of a difficult
Right.
situation making policy
Because we're making a decision to put somebody on our insurance
Against the
against
policy.
our policy in
Right.
effect. You know, it's
Right. And
that's a little bit of a.
I also want it to be clear for the record that as far as I'm concerned, and I believe we would all agree on this, that we have no interest in running the cemeteries or acting as that we're glad to relinquish that duty to the cemetery commissioners, but we do have that policy in place and are conflicted by the fact that apparently that policy is not being followed.
Right.
So,
But I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did we not have the cemetery commissioners, ourselves, and council all in the room at the same time, where council explained to both us and to the cemetery commissioners the need for subcontractors providing workman's comp?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
I'm not
not all
recalling
of
that
I
incorrectly.
mean, I don't think we had invited
No,
the commissioners.
the entire
No.
commission, but we had
but we had a representative
people were
from the cemetery
here
commission.
to
Yes.
speak to that.
Yes.
Okay.
So at this point right now, I guess I'm not sure how, I mean, I went ahead and made that decision based on, I felt somewhat responsible to this person that had been hired. I mean, he's planning on this money, he's, even though it wasn't this board that hired him, I just felt somewhat responsible for the fact that there was some communication problem within the office of
Right.
me telling him one thing and him being told something else. So I went ahead and did that just because I felt.
Is it reasonable for us
I
to?
just-
Is it reasonable for us to then, in creating next year's budget, to pass that cost on to the cemetery commission for the?
I suppose you
insurance
could.
cost?
I mean, yeah. I mean, at this point right now, yeah. I suppose you could. It's a very small amount.
Oh,
The only, yeah.
again,
The
it's
only- but-
really not a question of the
I
money
know.
at this point.
The difficult thing is that setting policy within a governing body where there are different legislative bodies that are overseeing it. So then, do they follow that policy? And if they don't, then they should probably be on their own and set their own policy, purchase their own insurance, and that would be the solution to the conflict, I think.
Right.
Yep.
So I guess I could write
Have a
something.
discussion as to whether that's what wants to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I think financially, for taxpayers, that is not in the taxpayers' best interest.
No, I'm sure we get
A better
deal as
yes.
one big
I mean, we
group.
could,
Right.
they could,
And many,
the cemetery
ways.
commissioners could explore that if they chose to. But I think that I'm guessing we would find that it would be more expensive. So.
Yeah. I mean, it is a difficult, as much as I've pushed this, it's a difficult policy to follow. I
Yeah.
totally am on board with the fact that it has been extremely difficult to follow this policy.
Yeah.
And although I firmly believe that if something happens, then that's when we're going to say, thank God we did.
Yeah.
But it's been difficult, and I get it. But I'm struggling with how do I know this is there, I'm struggling with turning a blind eye to it. I can't do that.
Yeah, no,
So-
and as we've discussed before, I'm not sure we've discussed this on record, but as you and I at least have discussed before, some towns do it by having a list of qualified contractors that they use for various things. And I have had at least one contractor come to me and say that they are interested in being able to work for the town and inquiring about what is necessary in order to be able to do that. And I think we don't want to exclude people from working for the town, but if we have a policy that requires workers' comp, then that's what we...
Yeah, I mean, and
I've
that's what
chosen
I'm
to do,
struggling
so.
with is that we had an electrician that wanted to work on the chemical feed building, and he didn't have workers' comp. And I talked to Simon's operation about it. He did go out and purchase it because he
Right.
wants so in one hand, I'm really forcing the hand on the stuff that I have control over. And I don't want control over everything. That's not what it's about. But I feel like everybody's not being treated the same at this
Right.
point.
No,
And it's a
and I
struggle.
think that the person who spoke to me about it was clear that they sort of wanted to do,
What they have to,
as it sounds like this electrician did,
Yeah.
that they wanted to do what the, I mean, I think some people are going to say, hey, I don't want to get involved with workers' comp, and therefore I'm not interested in
and I
working for the town. And
totally understand it.
absolutely, that's a choice. But I think that other people are saying, and I guess we need to, well, I mean, it may be as simple as just saying you need workers' comp, but maybe we need to come up with just a sort of bullet point set of requirements of what we do require for
liability,
et cetera,
Yes.
just so that somebody who is inquiring about that can come and
You
say,
can just hand it
what
to
do you
them and say,
need?
"Here it is."
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'll do
so
that.
I think that would be worth having.
So I'm not sure how to approach this. Do you want me to write something on behalf of the board to all the cemetery commissioners? I don't know what to, I mean, do we invite them to the next meeting again?
I think we
Or do we wait
leave
till
it up to
budget
them
time?
if they want to come and address it. I think
I mean, I sort of, like some sort of answer. Are they in fact ignoring our advice and advice of counsel, or willfully, or are this just oversight?
Well, we'll have to invite them to the next meeting
yeah.
to ask that question.
And
I mean, this-
again, we don't have jurisdiction over them, and I know
We do
we
not.
all are aware of that. But I just want that to be perfectly
Yeah.
clear that we don't want jurisdiction over them, but we do want our town policy
Right,
followed
but
because
the advice that
that's why we
council
set
offered
policy.
on this regarding
Absolutely.
the statute
Yeah.
covers all of us.
Yeah.
And if we are assuming the insurance,
Then we're accepting liability for
we're
something
accepting
that's
the
beyond our
liability that
control.
we are
Right.
not.
No, and I think the other thing we have to do is just make it clear
So
that if that's going to
that-
be the case, then
Right.
then
That's
they're going to
what
have to
needs
go out to
be
bid for their own insurance policy.
made very
So,
clear. Right.
Okay. So I will,
But do they still need that workman's comp if they decide to go after it themselves? Are they allowed to set that policy to not hire someone with in other words, to ignore the advice of counsel and the statute?
I don't know, but I don't think it's under our jurisdiction, so I don't
That-
think there's anything. I don't think there's
no,
anything.
I mean,
we-
that's where it becomes complex.
I would assume if they're doing it of their own volition, then there's
I
nothing
mean,
we can do
the
about it.
blame.
I don't know.
We shed the blame, but does are they capable of escaping?
Well,
Responsibility.
No, the
I mean, they'd be
liability would be theirs, which
right, exactly.
ultimately
The
would be the
liability would be
taxpayers.
theirs. Right,
I
exactly.
mean,
Which ultimately, yeah.
I mean,
So,
Ultimately, the taxpayers.
yeah, I mean,
are-
whether it's them setting policy or us setting policy or another board setting policy, if we take on a liability as a town
It's a town
board,
liability.
it's a town
Right.
liability. Now, at that point, though, that's for them to answer to the town about that.
To the
I mean,
taxpayers.
I mean, they may never have to. Nothing may never.
right.
my hope is that no one ever gets hurt. Is my hope.
Well,
Right,
that's
of course.
Of
Yeah.
course.
So, it may never even come up, but at that point, it's then their liability.
Yep.
So to the next meeting, ask them to come to the next meeting.
I mean, I guess ask them if they want to come to the next meeting.
Would one of you like to ask if they want to come to the next meeting?
I can do
Would
that.
you do that?
Certainly sign a letter or whatever.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to, however we need to do that. I mean, we don't want this to become a contentious issue.
No, I
We just
don't.
want to resolve it, so,
Yeah, I just want a resolution to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
makes sense.
I-
Yep. Remind me and I'll take care of it.
Okay.
Before we move on, I just want to say that I'm goes to the Wyndham Regional Commission, and I'm on the Transportation Committee and Natural Resources Committee, and I have been finding it more of a job. You know, I've had to clear other things out of my life to make me more capable of spending the time that's needed, and I'm finding it pretty interesting. The Transportation Committee, the last Transportation Committee meeting, there was an interesting presentation by Wayne Simons from V-Trans about the accelerated bridge program that the state of Vermont is going to adopt, which, and I think that with the new bridge, you know, the West River Bridge, they're going to put some of these things into practice. It's a way of trying to make the whole business take a lot less time and eliminate the necessity for maybe building temporary bridges, or, you know, by mainly having lots of the parts prefabricated and then kind of moved into place and put there. But what I mainly wanted to say, though, is that I just wanted to be kind of better in touch with you, and I did, you know, the last Transportation Committee meeting, they were asking about the two projects here in Putney, the park and ride and the walkway, the trail, and so I assume everything's going well. So anyway, I'd like, you know, if you ever feel you need to give me some guidance or want to, you know, things that I should be doing within those committees that I'm on. But,
Well, thank you for being active on them. Sorry, I assumed, Mel, that you were here for the affordable housing stuff, so I didn't offer you an opportunity to.
Yeah, because I certainly.
Sorry, otherwise I would have offered you the floor earlier.
That's quite
but.
all right. And I, you know, it was just fun to just, I don't know, I'm sort of at loose ends today.
Did you find anything out about the park and ride? Is it still going ahead? Because we haven't heard anything for quite a while.
I just
have
heard
we?
something today
Oh,
that
did
the
you?
permit. Well, I keep hearing that the permit should be here tomorrow.
Oh.
I've heard that a few times. So
The permit.
the permit for our local zoning permit application.
Application.
Sorry.
Is that
So,
something that the Wyndham Regional Commission should do something about, or is that something?
well,
that's-
Matt Mann's been pretty active in
Yeah.
asking questions.
Yeah.
But
Not
it-
getting a lot of answers.
It's
Yeah.
subject to DRB review.
Yes.
Yeah.
September 10th is when the hearing will be if the application comes across finance.
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
that's for the park.
Yeah.
But it was your impression from the transportation meeting that they're planning on going ahead with it?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was what we
Yes.
thought several months ago, and then
Yeah.
it's been so quiet, we thought maybe it
Yeah,
had disappeared.
no, it's
but-
still, it sounds like it's still, you know, it's still in the works, or that they,
Okay.
There's no stopping that. Once that money gets in the
Stimulus
pipeline,
money.
that's it.
That's right, yeah.
Right.
Well,
That's-
yeah, but, oh, and there are all kinds of other better back roads. There's a Better Back Roads grant.
We applied for that.
You've applied for
Yeah.
that, and steam bank programs, erosion prevention, and, but anyway.
Well, I would say anytime you go to a meeting, if you want to come in and sit and talk with me and tell me what it was that because I get stuff, I get
You get stuff.
inundated with emails, and sometimes I just don't take the time to
Oh,
read them
yes,
until
it
a
is a
few days
lot.
later. So if
It
you
is
go
a
and you
lot.
hear something, come in and talk with me.
Okay,
Yeah,
All right.
definitely.
I will.
The more ears
Good.
I have out there, the better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And,
Keep those wheels rolling, right?
that's great. Anyway, okay.
Have a good night.
Thanks. Good night.
Did everybody get a town fair? Okay.
Flyer.
I'm not going to go to the town fair.
What?
No. There's
What?
nothing there's nothing that is.
Didn't
No,
spark your
I didn't
interest?
see anything. I mean, the whole health insurance thing, the town fair is October 3rd. I'm hoping
Right.
I have it figured out by then. We have to start signing up October
I was
3rd.
going to say, right, isn't the dating on that struck me as a little.
So there really wasn't anything that interested me personally that I.
The continental breakfast.
Not even the turkey lunch didn't do it for me. So if
Rubber
someone's
chickens,
going to
they're
go, we could appoint them this at the next meeting. We won't do it tonight, but what is that? Consider nominating a
Oh.
municipal official to be a voting
Body. Yeah.
thing.
Have you been to these?
I've been to a million
Yeah.
of them, so I just not since I've been here, but I mean I worked in Westminster for 4 years, and then as working for Nimerick, I went to pretty much every one of them. So,
And they do serve a pretty good lunch, don't they?
yeah, you get a bag full of goodies when you go.
It's the town managers gathering that Chris always liked to go to. Is that right? What's that? Or is it the town fair at Lake Maury? Is that
No,
what it-
that's not town fair. That must be
Town managers. I
yeah.
think it was at Lake Maury.
I know that people love the town fair because you go and you get a bag from like a vendor, and then you can fill it with all sorts of pens and
One was
staplers and
select
erasers
board
and
orientation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
that
different.
was rather grim. That was like
Yeah.
it up in a VFW in Montclair.
Exactly.
That's where a lot of municipal officials, town clerks, treasurers, that's where we always got our pens and pencils. That's
Yeah.
what we did every year. There is a lot to learn there. I'm not knocking the whole. There's just nothing on there that I was interested in. I've been to enough of them. And then before we get down to the rest of it and we leave, I just want to talk about the next meeting date. August 7th, because Steve's going to be on vacation.
I'm gone.
You're gone too.
3rd to the 10th. I'm
So
not
we
here.
need to do something different with that.
That's the public meeting date.
Did you put that paper on? Sure.
Public meeting?
No, the zoning amendment to reduce the number of development review board members. That's okay, we can just
We'll
change
just have
it.
to do it now. So,
And that's us that does that? It's not they don't do that, their board?
They
no.
recommend.
They make
They
a
rec-
recommendation.
And then
do,
we,
and
and
then
then we approve it?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's going from 9 to 7, is that what it is?
But we changed the,
variable.
yeah, we changed the wording to variable, so if we say 7 for now
So you
and
can have a quorum, right?
With 5
later you
or
could
even
change it to
3.
5 if 7
Yeah.
isn't working. We don't have to keep
Yeah.
renaming them or So,
And yeah, the odds of my getting back that following
The 14th.
Wednesday, the 14th, because we're driving, I just can't guarantee.
I'll be here on the 14th, definitely, so
I will
Scott's here
not.
on the.
I will be here on, no.
but you guys can have a meeting without me.
Certainly.
Oh.
I mean, we'll certainly miss you, but
Laura will
do
do
we-
it.
we'll keep it brief.
Do we need a meeting? I mean,
That's 3 weeks. I would say we would need something.
yeah, okay.
I mean, I'll have, if there's stuff that comes
I
up,
would
I'll
assume
have
that
it
would be
prepared
just
for
warrants to be
So
signed
you'll
and
be
that
here
kind
the
of thing.
14th, Scott, that works for
I
you?
will be here the 14th.
Okay,
Okay,
so let's
so-
plan on that. If you make it, Steve, great. If you don't,
Okay.
no problem.
What, do we have to now cancel that as a public? I don't know, we'll have to figure that out. We won't do that the 14th either. We'll wait till the next, so then it'll be the 14th, then we'll just go every other, and then it'll be the 28th.
Yeah, because we're not in a push on time frame on that.
No,
28th,
well,
I won't be here, but that's okay.
we're not in a huge push on time frame other than the fact that this month I could not get a quorum for a hearing, so it made me
Oh.
push a little faster,
right,
you know,
right.
it woke me up a little bit, but, okay.
Yeah, I'm going from the 21st to the 28th also, so.
So for the inviting of the cemetery commissioners, do we want to wait till there's a quorum, or would till all of you are here?
Probably, I don't think we're in any great hurry on that either, are we?
Okay, so
That-
we'll say that one for August 28th.
I'm
Oh, you're
not
not
here
gonna
on
be
the
there.
28th. But you can do it without me.
No, that's okay. We'll wait till
Okay.
September to have them back. Or invite them again. Okay.
Invite them and cancel a couple times.
Okay. And then I just stuck a budget report, a current year budget report in here. There's not a lot on it because we haven't done a lot. I don't know what I did with mine.
What
But
are
it's-
those zeros?
Well, that's all revenue. We have no revenue.
No.
Just to start looking, Steve hasn't had a chance to look at a lot of these, but
Mhm.
I think at some point, starting maybe September, we'll start going through maybe each department, just so you guys can, because we'll be starting the budget season again. And just maybe inviting, you know, department heads in, or just ask questions about every aspect of it, but it's just a start to look at it.
Okay.
So there's not much going on, and the auditor is starting they're starting the audit the week of the 6th, I think. So, by that next meeting, you'll definitely have a financial report that shows us what our balance is for last year. Wow, that's 2 weeks from now, isn't it? That is coming here. We did pay for the truck. That's a big, the $45,000 or $40,000 for the truck. Oh, that's not in. Oh, it is in there. 42. And there's warrants. And we're working on that uniform. Remember I brought that to you? This turned a little bit into a nightmare. I couldn't find a contract for the uniform company, so I thought our contract had lapsed. Well, it hasn't. It's for 2015. So I'm trying to figure out a way to get out of that, because none of the guys are really using it anyways.
Is there any way we can amend it so it would be more useful to them? I mean,
Not really, because there's not. No.
I mean, can we just, don't we offer like a shoe stipend?
They offer shoe.
Right, so why
They
not say,
did go ahead
why
and
not
buy
sort
some
of a-
T-shirts and sweatshirts with
Right.
the Putney logo on it. We went ahead. Well, we went ahead and did that,
I mean,
and
all-
then found out this contract was still.
Yeah.
But it'll be nice. They've got, you know, you've seen the sweatshirts.
did
that
we
they,
get it?
Well, no, we talked. Laura and I talked about that.
Thanks for talking about it.
But we didn't get them
appreciate
either.
that.
You know what Brian said? The logo's up to Vermont Tees. Go get as many
Yeah,
as
they-
you want.
right,
Except I think he's told
Nothing if
Vermont
not
Tees,
practical.
I think he's told
Don't
Vermont,
allow
don't let
anybody
anyone
else.
use
Yeah.
that. So you will see them walking around with some new shirts and sweatshirts and stuff.
That's great. Glad to know somebody's got them.
Oh, I'll get you a t-shirt. Jeez. What a t-shirt.
Other business. I came in and talked to Cynthia the other day, and I'm just bringing it up so that we know that it's out there. Noise issue over in particularly over on the lower end of Houghton Brook Road, which we've talked about before, I think, that there is at least one neighbor who is
spinning tires.
idling trucks, long work hours, starting early, working late, and whether our noise ordinance addresses that at all, and it seems like it's pretty vague, and whether
Right, define early.
yeah, exactly, and whether permitting of any business that's in that area was contingent upon anything noise related, and it doesn't appear to have been. But
It existed before any kind of
permitting process.
process
Right.
did exist.
Well, there was a
Go to
permit for
grandfather.
a construction yard. Is that
But
what-
that was added. That was
Oh, okay.
that was a later addition to the already existing. So, I'm not sure what we do about that, but it has been voiced on numerous occasions that it's a problem. So, I'm just raising the issue, and I guess we'll revisit
Well, I'm
it.
going to look into. I have some other noise complaints that are sitting, mostly dogs, loud tools being run, that kind of, at certain all hours of the night, that kind of thing. So I think an overall look at our noise policy, which
Yeah,
is an extremely difficult thing to
enforce.
enforce and
It's
frankly to prove sometimes.
issues.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is a big problem.
means of livings and things like
Yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah.
really, it's a difficult,
And boy, nothing will set neighbors
Nope.
arguing with neighbors like
yeah.
a chainsaw running too early in the morning.
Yeah, no, it's a problem.
So,
Is it, this isn't in the Brook there, isn't it in Demerson?
Parts of it are, but not,
Oh, not
but not all of it. No,
No,
it
think
sort of
the
wanders
crossroad
across
of
the
Signal
road,
Pine
right there.
Road and Odenbrook Road,
Yeah.
right there, and the other side of the road is Demerston. From there, going
Some of
down
it,
to
yeah.
Route 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's down a little ways. I mean, like Brad's old
Like Brad's
house.
old house was in
Was in
Demerston,
Demerston.
but his father's house across the street was in Putney.
Right.
Because I was just wondering, that's an issue, is the noisemaker in Demerson versus Putney? Okay.
No. So no, and it's a, you know, it's a thorough commercial operation over there, which, you know, nobody has any objection to. It's just an objection to, as Scott pointed out, lifestyle of, you know, when does the workday start and when does the workday stop, and who's fair to who about that. So,
yeah, it's a difficult one.
it is a tough one, definitely.
I mean, because I've had complaints of, you know, motocross type bikes, you know, I mean, that's come up in the last, well, you know, the start of summer kind of brought it up, but, you know, and when you go to that policy, it's not, and even if you have even a more defined policy, it's still hard because it's subjective. I mean,
Right.
I don't know, you know, is it
It's
15
subjective.
minutes,
By
is
the
it half
time
an hour?
by the
I
time
can't
you-
prove how
By
long
the time
it's
you get
been.
around to making a policy and getting
Right.
people to start sticking to it, that generation of children has grown up,
Right.
put the motorbikes in the garage, and suddenly
Yeah.
there's no noise there.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
so-
moved up the road or down the road. Or,
So I'm not suggesting that the policy needs to change. It's more of just, I don't know what needs to, I don't know, it's hard. I mean, Melissa has a record of helping me deal with noise issues and working with neighbors. I mean, I call on her a lot for stuff. But as far as enforcement, it's hard.
Yeah, no, and I think that, you know, as we talked about the other day, it's more about sort of asking people to be courteous as much as it's anything, and that's, you know, for some that's going out on a limb, but I think that that's part of what the approach needs to be. It's just a friendly reminder.
It's the
kind of
only
thing.
way that
Exactly, because we don't want to step on anybody's toes, and we don't want to run anybody's business. But
arguing into creating bitterness.
yeah.
But you're right though, because all of our kids that drove those things
Oh,
are all gone. Now it's vehicles.
No, I can remember trouble spots with it before,
Uh-huh.
which you know,
That's
are
a
no
whole
longer
different
there because
business that's going to be there for a while, but
those kids grew up and moved on, or are driving those dump trucks down.
Yeah.
the only other thing that I have is that if anybody could make some time in before the next meeting to come in and look over the information that I've found out about Meeting House Pierce. Need another set of eyes on it.
Maybe we can all make an effort to
Yeah.
do what we can.
Because that will be at on the next agenda.
Yeah, because he wants some resolution. to
Yeah.
that. And
We do.
it's legitimate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at any point, do you think you can make it in and I can just kind of run through what I found?
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay.
Try not to come in at the same time because then that's a meeting.
Mm.
Oh, is that right?
Any more than, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we adjourn?
I'm ready to go have dinner.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Aye, aye, aye.